Okay, so inflation, I think, is one of the more misunderstood concepts, by everybody pretty much. Even though it's relatively simple, people always think of. I mean, if you look at inflation and look for a definition, they kind of say it's a fall in the value of money. And everybody has these visions of kind of German hyperinflation in the 1920s where people are burning money to keep warm. And they think that inflation is simply somehow related to the amount of money that's in circulation. And that's not true. Um, it can be true, but inflation is inflation is much simpler. Yeah, inflation really it's simply an increase in the overall price level in the economy. Yeah, sustained over time, and generally it's measured in percent. Yeah, and we use a kind of representative basket of goods to kind of work out roughly what's happening to prices. Yeah, so the current basket has all sorts of things in it. It's got I don't know, it's got fruit and vegetables, it's got deodorant, it's got apps, it's got music streaming, it's got petrol, it's everything that the average person might buy is in this basket, and then they just kind of the Office for National Statistics just says, okay, how much has it gone up or down by? So it's got nothing directly to do with money. Inflation. Yeah, inflation at the moment over the last sort of 10 years, it's averaged kind of around 2%. What that means is that the average price level is rising by 2% a year. In the 1970s, inflation hit as much as 25%. Yeah, and I think it averaged about 10% throughout the 1970s. So what's that got to do with the value of money? The answer is very simple. That if you had a £10 note, and you stuck it in a pot, you just left it there. Here's my prop. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Suppose I take that £10, and I just kind of stick it, bury it in the ground, and then I come back a few years later. Well, when I take that £10 down to the shops, what I've discovered, is that it buys less than it did before. I can buy fewer goods and services, than I could previously, simply because the price level is higher. So all inflation is, forget about kind of falls in the value of money and so on. All inflation is rising prices across the economy as a whole. So that's what it is. Who cares? And the answer is quite a lot of people. So who cares? Firstly, anybody with savers, they care. For the reason that I just said, which is if you've got 10 quid in your bank, and there is inflation, well, the rising prices means that when you take that money out, you're going to have less. So it erodes the value of savings, and that's particularly bad if you're elderly, if you are an old person, and you're living off your savings, or you're living off some sort of fixed pension. So, I mean, pensions are a massively complicated field, but a lot of them, they simply pay you a fixed amount of money per year until you die. Inflation then wipes out the real value of that. The state pension is often what's called index-linked, which means that it does kind of, if prices go up by 3%, the pension goes up by 3%, but it's not as even as that, and particularly if inflation is really fast, it may take time for that one to catch up. A lot of private pensions, they're not index-linked at all, which means that as prices rise, in reality, in what we call real terms, your pension, falls in value. Thirdly, it's not good, for firms who are trying to compete. Not in the UK, because everybody else's prices are going up as well, but firms trying to compete internationally, they're going to have problems. If British prices are rising by 5%, but German prices are only rising by 2%, guess what? People aren't going to buy British stuff after a bit, because our price levels are going to be too high. And fourthly, it creates confidence issues for businesses. High levels of inflation implies instability in the economy. You're not quite clear what the government's going to do about it, and therefore that's going to decrease the level of investment. And investment is quite important. We want new machinery, new factories, new innovations, to help the economy to keep growing. We talked about the size of the glass, in the GDP video. investment, in technology, innovations, just equipment, is what helps that glass to grow in size. And therefore, governments have been concerned to try to keep inflation relatively low, to avoid people's living standards, especially people who are on fixed incomes, from losing out. And that's a particular issue because if you are relatively wealthy, then you can protect yourself against inflation. So I work for Doverbrooks. If they don't give me a pay rise in line with inflation, then I'll simply go and work somewhere else. I have shares, they tend to increase in line with inflation, and I own my own house, which increases its value in line with inflation. So if you're kind of middle class, middle income type person, inflation affects you less generally than if you're low income and have no way of defending yourself, and therefore inflation tends to worsen inequality, which again is something governments tend to worry about.